It's just really great to hear and see the collaboration and folks putting faces with names like, oh, we've known each other, just to make those connections, because that's really what today again is about, is collaboration. So thank you all. And those of you online, I know it was a little tricky to get folks in that space to do what you all needed to do for in the online space. It's tricky. And so thank you all online in the room for hanging out with us to contribute, to put our thoughts forward and to keep thinking about what we do better, how we move forward in this work. So would love to we're going to spend a few minutes doing some share outs, and we've got some mic runners, myself included. Would love to hear from our breakout rooms first online in terms of takeaways. And these can be things that came up. They don't have to follow the quote unquote script of, question 1, question 2, question 3. But obviously we want to know what's happening, what's going well, but obviously, where do we go from here? What can the consortium do to help, whether it's in the treatment space, the harm reduction space, the public awareness space, other spaces that came up in your conversations? So I'm going to pass the mic around in the room here in just a minute, but offer up to our online folks first to jump in if you would like. And thanks to, I think Shayna and Eric were our facilitators for our breakout rooms online. So Shayna and Eric, if one of you wants to jump in with some takeaways, or if anyone else on your group wants to as well, that's totally fine.
I wonder, this is not Shayna or Eric. Sorry, this is Kristen. Lindsay, do you mind kind of sharing some of what we chatted through? Because you had a lot of insights that were pretty cool.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think some of the biggest themes that came up in our group is creative in terms of accessing different populations. And someone shared in our group some of the creativity that was happening with a colleague of theirs in Illinois or the Chicago area, where they were really working closely with barbershops and restaurants. I think it may have been the other one. I can't remember, but it was a couple of different outlets that I hadn't thought about in terms of how to get harm reduction materials into the community and to different populations. And I know up in the Northwest, we've really looked at how do we work with our mining operations and our construction operations and our hospitality operations, and get and in different ways too, whether it's public health is what we normally think of, but how are we distributing these supplies maybe in coffee shops or that not necessarily our health and human services realm or thought aspect. We also kind of talked about how some of the rural communities maybe have more opportunities to do this work well because of the collaboration that is necessitated with the lower capacity and population in our communities, that we have to come together to share this work and share the funding that's now shrinking. Also thinking about how we might be able to partner outside of the clinical and nonprofit sectors into the business sectors and start to get sponsorships with organizations where we're providing harm reduction agencies or harm reduction resources and tools, and how they may be able to then help offset some of the costs and help support that so that we can continue that work. And then we also talked a lot about how we potentially driven campaigns, but then be able to have resources behind them, both from a financial perspective as well as from a.
Hey, Lindsay, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you say that again in terms of the other topic? You cut out there for a second.
Thanks for interrupting. Sorry, I'm driving. But we were talking about being able to work with statewide campaigns.
Say that again.
So we're talking about how the challenges with statewide campaigns are that ultimately, even if we're working really hard to, in the first place, make them useful to all groups, normally they're not like zoned in enough to localize well. And so the need that would be fantastic of any statewide campaigns is to essentially show up with materials that can then be localized and also with maybe a little bit of money so that there's like a mini grant that comes with the materials that folks can make work in their area based on their populations and their groups of interest. And we had talked about some examples of what that has looked like, but without the funding, and then what that has looked like with the funding. An example that came up was in Summit County, they had some money and they did some bus wraps with Keep the Party Safe, but that a lot of communities wouldn't be able to do something like that because they didn't have the funding to do it. And so needing to think about, yeah, we have these campaigns and they're well thought out and there's maybe a ton of different kinds of materials or ways to utilize them, but communities might not have access to do that in a way that fits what the local area needs if they don't have the funding to implement those materials well. I'm hoping I captured that, Lindsay. You were cutting out. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, thank you. The only thing that I would add is funding and expertise. We can't leave out the expertise because a lot of times in our smaller communities, we don't have that expertise or access to it.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else from your group that you'd like to highlight? In terms of recovery-oriented systems of care, maybe you talked a lot about harm reduction as well as public awareness messaging. Anything from?
I think the majority of our conversation, nope, I think we covered the biggest points unless, Lindsay, you have something else you want to add or someone else from our group.
I think the only other thing that really came up was maybe continue the model that the consortium has been doing in terms of treatment, criminal justice, and doing those statewide stakeholder engagement sessions, but broadening that to different topic areas and bringing more collaborative meeting opportunities in local community together throughout the year to continue some of the work that's being done at the work group level statewide, but localizing it.
Great. Thank you so much. Anything from your group, Eric?
Yeah, one of the through lines was career ladders for people with lived experience and people in the peer support professional field. That was something that came up with more than one of the participants. And then we came to the conclusion that there might already be enough campaigns. New campaigns may not be something that's missing. So like was mentioned, trying to leverage what already exists and find ways to localize some of those campaigns. And then some of the ones that came up that folks had found useful were things like stories in black and white, lift the label, changing minds, level up, and then a bit of our own keep the party safe from the consortium. If anybody else who was in that room wants to chime in, if I missed anything, please feel free.
Great. Thank you. If some of our other conversations spark any additions, please just jump right in for our folks online. But move into the room. Happy to hear kind of a report out from different table conversations. Again, highlights, to-dos that you've identified for the consortium, relationships that you've formed at your tables, opportunities. I see you pointing. Thank you.
I volunteered. I had the mic, made it worse.
She was voluntold, it looks like.
So I'm kind of summarizing all three questions is what it sounds like.
Just, highlights or things that stood out. It doesn't have to be all three, but
Okay. I mean, a lot of our conversation honestly kept coming back to like involving the communities that you're working with. We had a couple examples of people creating campaigns or messaging or something along those lines without involving multiple parties to get multiple perspectives. And so because of that, some of what was shared or what was created had unintentional messaging that wasn't really like clearly getting across what they were trying to communicate or what the end goal was. So our big highlights were understand and involve the community in your goals. We would love training or work session groups to support one another in doing so practically or comprehensively. We also talked about yes. Oh, okay. Well, let me put hold on. Okay. We also talked about having like a database of shared resources, but also like people who are willing to step up and review information and make sure that we're not missing some of those cultural marks because one agency can't be expected to meet every single like bullet point in terms of those groups. So start at the community level, focus on a community champion who can help you identify stigmas and rely on their expertise, provide opportunity for more conversations from the community, and then have that knowledge and understanding move upwards throughout the organization rather than downwards. Even within this packet, we discussed like some of the language and acronyms that have been used that like maybe aren't felt within the communities they're aimed at. And then yeah, I think, did I miss something? Okay, now I think I'm just nervous rambling. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate, again, all of you sticking out and really engaging and digging your minds and your hearts into these conversations. Other things that are different than what's already been shared that groups would like to report out on? Go for it, Sarah. Hillary's right behind you with the mic.
Thank you. We discussed harm reduction and recovery extensively and how they seem to be almost mutually exclusive sometimes, and we really need to have more communication and understanding between these two groups, that it's a continuum and not a separate issue. We talked about a broader vision of recovery, looking at basically supporting total life skills and the importance of organizations like Advocates for Recovery, because they do cover such a broad spectrum of the community. We also discussed how there are so many organizations doing things right now, but we don't know what everybody else is doing. In fact, we brought up a website, the Lifts Care Navigator, Own Path. These were two sites that I was not familiar with. So we need to really increase the visibility of all of the agents in this state so that we can all work together and maybe have just a better PR campaign for the consortium. And then we can help refer people to these organizations, and they in turn can refer people to us. So I think just increasing our visibility would and improving our ability to communicate with everybody in the state to maybe act as more of a clearinghouse to refer people to other organizations and have them referred to us. We also discussed public service announcements and the need to get the community outside of those in this room involved, or at least understanding what exactly harm reduction and recovery mean. We decided that people in general don't understand. And if they don't understand and advocate, especially regarding education for children, it won't happen. They need to advocate for their kids in schools to get education around substance use disorder. We can't tell the schools what to do. I think the parents really need to do that. That was my opinion. Sorry, I brought that in. Please, anybody else at the table want to add anything? Okay.
We could use some help too around grant language that oftentimes seems very narrow and will stigmatize itself before the service may even come to fruition if we can't cast just a little bit of a wider net, knowing that a lot of the folks we come in contact with are polysubstance users. And so having a funding source that's focused like exclusively on opioids or exclusively on alcohol use disorder makes it really, really challenging when we can help this person, but not this person.
Thanks. Oh, yep.
All right, from this group over here, just to emphasize a few things. There were lots of positive things around recovery-oriented system of care, so we'll get those in the sheets. But the opportunities were pretty much related to some things you were saying here around the need to increase collaboration among organizations and that partnership piece. But I'll highlight the one thing I think that really came out in terms of an opportunity for, not opportunity, but a role for the consortium would be to help with more of the networking opportunities. And even the idea of potentially, could we do some things regionally? Could we help convene people like this to do this kind of thinking every so often in the regions? Mhm.
Mike's coming right behind you.
Right behind you.
Sorry, I think I'm going to speak since I'm the only person who can read my handwriting. So we talked a lot about the what we do as healthcare providers, which sometimes makes people less likely to obtain care. So the kind of complex interaction between mandated reporting, misunderstanding of mandated reporting requirements, trust, and barriers to care. Related to this, but not exactly the same thing, is also the lack of warm handoffs, actually. Additionally, thinking about workforce development and like supporting people in the workforce across a continuum of care, and thinking about making time for reflective supervision, which is a challenge in the treatment of substance use disorders, because substance use care is like perpetually under-resourced compared to mental health, which is perpetually under-resourced compared to your medical health. And it all occurs in the same brain for the two and the same body for the medical health. Also thinking about the role of social determinants of health and barriers, including transportation and childcare. Thank you, Illuminate, for the childcare piece. And then dissemination of resources. So understanding things like the BASOs and the signal lift system, which are out there, which, you know, several people at our table, including myself, didn't know about. So getting that word out about that. Anybody else want to add something?
Any additional thoughts? I'm loving all the different facets that you all have identified, and several opportunities, as Rob and I, if you saw us up here kibitzing, we're chatting about, yes, we need to do that. Yes, we can do more of that. You know, this is a complex issue. It takes all of us from our different perspectives, our different lanes of work, to collaborate with one another. And we look forward to creating more opportunities to bring conversations like these together, thought leaders together, regionally, statewide. And we appreciate being a part of this conversation, and appreciate your thoughts and ideas. And yeah, we've got lots of work to do, don't we? Did you have something to add? Go for it. If you hold on just one second, Jess is coming with the mic.
I was just thinking that it might also be interesting if we had a way to have a bridge to other states that maybe are doing things differently, and so that we could think about new and innovative ideas that maybe we never even considered. I know that that's harder because we have regional differences, but at the same time, I bet that there's a lot of like ideas that are born in other spaces that could be modified here.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think we try and really keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in other states, whether it's the Bridge program in California or some of the prevention work happening in North Carolina. There are some amazing people, and one of y'all mentioned Chicago and what they're doing. And so, yes, I think that's absolutely a role that we can and should play, is bringing more of that information to you, your organization, your region, our state, to say, what can we learn from this? What pieces do we adapt for us? How do we move some of this forward as we see things working in other communities, and try it on and give it our best shot to make those things work in our communities as well. So with that, I just encourage you all, unless you took notes and you want to take those notes with you, note takers, please just leave your note cards with ideas, leave your note-taking packet on your table. We will collect those when we wrap up. And give yourselves a nice round of applause for your amazing participation.